The love story of Cleopatra and Mark Antony is legendary. But what if I told you most of what you think you know is wrong? It wasn't a simple tale of seduction and romance. It was a high-stakes game of power, politics, and passion that shook the ancient world to its very core. Today, we're uncovering 10 shocking truths about their relationship that will completely change how you see these two iconic figures. Get ready, because history is much wilder than the movies. Let's start with their first meeting. Forget the idea of a lovesick queen trying to seduce a Roman general. When Cleopatra met Mark Antony, her primary goal was survival. She needed to secure her throne in Egypt, and Antony, one of the most powerful men in Rome, was the key. She orchestrated a spectacular entrance, sailing up the river Cydnus in a magnificent barge, dressed as the goddess Venus. But this display wasn't about love. It was a calculated political performance designed to awe Antony and establish herself as his equal, a divine ruler he couldn't ignore. The romance, the legendary passion, that came later. First and foremost, this was a strategic alliance. Cleopatra was fighting for her kingdom, and she played her hand perfectly. Now, let's talk about Cleopatra's famous beauty. Was she really the irresistible siren portrayed in films? Ancient sources tell a different story. The historian Plutarch, for instance, wrote that her beauty was not in and of itself so remarkable, and that she wasn't as stunning as other queens of her time. So what was her secret weapon? Her mind. Cleopatra was brilliant. She was fluent in at least 9 languages, a skilled mathematician, and a sharp political strategist. It was her intelligence, her wit, and the captivating sound of her voice that truly charmed Antony. He was captivated by her intellect and charisma. She could hold a conversation on any topic, shifting from serious political debate to lighthearted banter in an instant. This irresistible combination of brains and personality is what made her unforgettable, proving that true power isn't just about looks. Once their alliance was forged, their lives in Alexandria became the stuff of legend. Together, they founded an exclusive club, a secret society they called the Society of Inimitable Livers. This wasn't just any social club. It was a circle dedicated to a life of extreme pleasure and extravagance. They held nightly feasts, elaborate drinking games, and lavish parties that defied all Roman ideals of discipline and moderation. It was their way of creating a world for themselves, free from the rigid rules of Rome. They were essentially the ultimate power couple, living a life of pure indulgence and rebellion against the established order. This wasn't just partying, it was a political statement, a celebration of their unique bond in their Eastern lifestyle. But their lives weren't all lavish parties and royal duties. One of the most surprising things about them was their desire to experience life as ordinary people. The couple would often disguise themselves in common clothes and wander the streets of Alexandria at night. They would visit taverns, play pranks on unsuspecting citizens, and simply enjoy the anonymity of the crowd. Can you imagine 2 of the most powerful rulers in the world blending in, sharing a drink, and laughing with the very people they ruled? For Antony, a Roman general, this was liberating. For Cleopatra, a queen revered as a living goddess, it was an unheard-of breach of royal protocol. It shows a playful, human side to their relationship that often gets lost in the epic tales of war and politics. This deep connection had devastating political consequences, especially for Antony. He became so enthralled with Cleopatra and their life in Alexandria that he started neglecting his duties in Rome. He was married to a Roman woman, Octavia, who was also the sister of his chief political rival, Octavian. By abandoning his lawful wife for a foreign queen, Antony committed a massive political blunder. In Roman eyes, he was choosing a foreign temptress over his family, his people, and his responsibilities. This decision not only damaged his reputation, but also gave Octavian the perfect propaganda weapon to turn Rome against him. Antony's love for Cleopatra ultimately set him on a collision course with his own country. Their relationship wasn't just a political alliance or a passionate affair. They built a family together. Cleopatra gave birth to 3 of Antony's children, the twins Alexander Helios and Cleopatra Selene, and a younger son named Ptolemy Philadelphus. For Antony and Cleopatra, these children were the future of their shared empire. a dynasty that would merge the power of Rome and Egypt. But back in Rome, this was seen as an outrage. The Roman Senate refused to recognize these children as legitimate heirs. They were viewed as symbols of Antony's betrayal, the offspring of a scandalous and illegitimate union. This rejection further deepened the divide between Antony and Rome, making a peaceful resolution impossible. The final nail in Antony's political coffin was a grand public ceremony, known as the Donations of Alexandria. In a stunning display of power, Antony sat on a golden throne next to Cleopatra, who was dressed as the goddess Isis. In front of a massive crowd, he declared Cleopatra the queen of kings and distributed vast territories of the Roman East to her and their 3 children. He was essentially giving away parts of the Roman Empire. When news of this reached Rome, it was seen as the ultimate act of treason. Octavian seized the opportunity, painting Antony as a man so bewitched by a foreign queen that he was willing to dismember the empire for her. This event turned public opinion against Antony for good and gave Octavian the justification he needed to declare war. That war culminated in the legendary Battle of Actium, a naval showdown that would decide the fate of the world. And it's here that we see one of history's most debated acts of love. In the middle of the battle, for reasons historians still argue about, Cleopatra's fleet suddenly broke formation and began to withdraw. Seeing her ships retreat, Antony made a fateful choice. He abandoned his own men, his massive fleet and legions, and followed her. His flagship broke through the enemy lines to sail after Cleopatra's vessel. To his soldiers, it was an act of shocking desertion. To his enemies, it was proof that he was completely under Cleopatra's control. Was it cowardice? Or was it an act of a man who couldn't bear to be separated from the woman he loved, even in defeat? Whatever the reason, his decision sealed their fate. After their defeat at Actium, Antony's world crumbled. As Octavian's forces closed in on Alexandria, a false rumor reached Antony. Cleopatra was dead. Devastated and believing he had nothing left to live for, he fell on his sword. But the wound wasn't immediately fatal. As he lay dying, he learned the truth: Cleopatra was still alive, barricaded in her mausoleum. His loyal guards carried him to her, and he was hoisted up the walls of the monument. Antony died in Cleopatra's arms, a tragic end to a love story that had defied an empire. His final moments were spent with the woman for whom he had sacrificed everything. With Antony gone and her kingdom lost, Cleopatra faced a humiliating future. Octavian planned to parade her through the streets of Rome in chains, a living trophy of his victory, the ultimate symbol of the conquered East. But Cleopatra, the last pharaoh of Egypt, was a queen to the very end. She refused to be a pawn in anyone's triumph. She chose her own destiny. According to the most famous account, she arranged for a snake, an asp, to be smuggled to her in a basket of figs. She allowed the venomous serpent to bite her, choosing a swift and dignified death over a life of shame and subjugation. In her final act, she asserted her power one last time, robbing her conqueror of his ultimate prize and cementing her place in history as an icon of defiance and strength. Their story didn't end in victory, but in a legendary tragedy that continues to captivate us thousands of years later. Thank you so much for watching. If you found these facts as fascinating as I did, be sure to hit that like button and subscribe for more deep dives into history's greatest stories.